I never thought I'd wake up to a day that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my wife and our life together. It started like any other day, kind of quiet and predictable. I'd gotten up early because I had to prep for a work trip, and my wife was still asleep, curled up under the blanket like she was trying to hide from the world. I remember the faint scent of her shampoo, a little floral, mixed with the stale coffee lingering in the air from the night before. Just normal, or so I thought. But then I noticed something strange. When I went to grab my phone off the nightstand, I saw it. A text message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the name on the screen made my stomach turn cold. It wasn't just a random number, it was her boss's name, Tom. I'd seen him a handful of times. Tall, confident, the kind of guy who always looked like he just stepped out of a magazine. This message wasn't work-related either. Just a casual, can't wait to see you tonight. We're finally alone. My palms started to sweat, my heart pounded. Hard enough that I could hear it in my ears. I felt the blood drain from my face. How had I not seen it coming? I looked at her, still sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I wanted to wake her up, to shake her until she admitted everything, but part of me also froze. I didn't want to believe it. That's when I remembered the strange call I'd seen her ignore the night before. She acted distracted, glancing at her phone and then quickly shoving it face down when I entered the room. I thought maybe she was just stressed or worried about something. I told myself it was nothing. Now I knew better. I did what anyone would do in that moment. I grabbed her phone and scrolled through her messages. The texts from Tom were more than flirtatious. They were explicit. They talked about meeting up, about escaping for a night, about promises she'd made that she'd never keep. And then I saw the hotel receipts tucked inside her email, hidden under a folder named Work Stuff. I stared at the screen, feeling like someone had punched me in the gut. There was the name of a hotel, the date, the bill, almost $1,000 for a night she didn't tell me about. I felt my throat tighten. My hands trembled and I was about to throw her phone across the room when she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open and she looked at me with that innocent, sleepy smile. "Good morning," she murmured, voice soft and warm as if everything was perfectly normal. I froze, my mind racing. How do I confront her? How do I start? My voice caught in my throat, so I just looked at her, burning with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I knew now that the woman I'd loved for years had been hiding something terrible. The betrayal hit harder than I ever imagined, like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. "Who the hell is Tom?" I finally managed to ask, voice tight and strained. Her face flickered for a second, shock maybe. Then she shifted, trying to act like I was overreacting. "What are you talking about?" "It's just work stuff," she said, avoiding eye contact. "No," I snapped, voice louder than I intended. "I saw the hotel receipts, the messages. Don't lie to me. How long has this been going on?" Her eyes darted away and I saw her swallow hard. She opened her mouth, probably to deny it again, but I was done waiting. I felt a cold resolve settle over me. I needed time to think, to plan, because I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without consequences. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, not after this. But what shocked me even more was how calm I suddenly felt, cold, almost detached. Like I was already preparing for what's next. I didn't want to do anything impulsive, but I also knew I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible. And that's when I started to realize I'd have to do something. I had to make her pay in a way she wouldn't forget. But first, I'd need to gather everything, proof, evidence, and a plan. Because once I confronted her, there'd be no turning back. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "We're done. And I'm going to make sure you regret ever doing this." She looked stunned, maybe even a little afraid, but I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Not by a long shot. I spent the rest of that morning in a fog, watching her scramble to act innocent as if she could undo what I'd just seen. But I wasn't buying it. The hotel receipts, the explicit texts, they burned in my mind like a fresh wound. I kept replaying her words, her fake smiles, her false concern when I asked her about her whereabouts. The lie had been so easy for her, so natural. That's what cut the deepest. I needed to cool off, to think clearly. I went outside just to breathe, and I felt the cool air hit my face, sharp and refreshing in contrast to the chaos inside me. My stomach was churning, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't afford to lose control, not yet. Instead, I started planning. First, I had to be sure. I knew she'd lied, deny, do everything to cover her tracks, so I started digging. I remembered that her phone was always on her, so I waited until she was in the shower. That was my chance. I discreetly grabbed her phone, unlocked it with the password I'd guessed 100 times before, her birthday. It felt like a betrayal of my own, but I needed to know exactly what she'd been hiding. I scrolled through her messages and call logs, nothing out of the ordinary there, until I saw the email thread with her boss, Tom. The emails weren't just work stuff. They were packed with flirtatious comments, plans to meet, and a lot of "can't wait to see you." I read through them, feeling my blood boil. She'd been sneaking around behind my back for months, maybe more. I found pictures, screenshots of hotel receipts, confirmation emails, and even a selfie she had taken with Tom at the hotel. It was all real, concrete proof. I clenched my fists so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I didn't want to just confront her now. I wanted to get everything lined up, all my ducks in a row. Later that evening, I sat her down in the living room. She looked exhausted, trying to act like everything was normal, but I wasn't in the mood for games. I laid the phone down on the table face up and slid the receipts across the surface. Her face went pale. "What is this?" she whispered, voice trembling. I looked her straight in the eyes. "You lied about where you were, you lied about who you were with, and I've got the proof. Hotel receipts, messages, everything." Her eyes flickered with guilt, but she quickly masked it with a forced calm. "It's just a mistake, it doesn't mean anything." "Don't bullshit me," I spat. "I saw the texts, I saw the hotel. How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, then finally broke down. "It was just once, I swear. I didn't mean for it to go this far." That's when I realized I'd been naive. I'd believed in her, believed in us. But the truth was, she'd been planning her escape right under my nose. I sat back, feeling a cold determination settle over me. I needed to do something drastic, something she wouldn't expect. I told her I was leaving for a few days to think. But really, I was heading to my buddy's place. I needed space, yes, but also time to plan. I wouldn't just walk away, not without making her feel the weight of what she'd done. I had to make her regret this. I had to make her understand that I wasn't some fool she could cheat on without consequences. That night I started drafting my plan. It was simple but effective. Expose her to her boss's wife, make her see the damage she'd caused, and take back control of my life. I knew her pride would be bruised, maybe even shattered, and that's exactly what I aimed for. Before I left, I packed a bag, took a deep breath, and looked around the house. The place I'd built, now broken. My hands clenched into fists again. "You'll regret this," I muttered under my breath. "You're not the only one who can play this game." As I turned to walk out the door, I glanced back at her. She looked helpless, guilty, and scared, all in one. That's when I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. I didn't need to say a word anymore. Her actions had already spoken volumes. I left her standing there, her face pale and trembling, and I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with fury. This was just the beginning. I'd find a way to make her pay, and I'd come back stronger. But first, I had to make sure everything was perfect, every detail mapped out, every move calculated, because I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to use her own lies against her, and I was going to make sure she paid every price for her betrayal. It was a couple of days later when I finally sat down with my plan fully formed in my mind. I'd been working on it in the back of my head, piecing everything together like a puzzle. I knew I had what I needed: proof, leverage, clarity, and now it was about timing. I wanted to hit her where it hurt most, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just blow up her life without thinking it through. I got back to the house that evening, feeling the familiar knot tighten in my stomach. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch, nervously twisting her hands. She barely looked up when I entered, and I could tell she knew I'd found out. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. I didn't waste time. I pulled out the hotel receipts, the screenshots from her phone, and the email chain I'd printed out. I laid everything on the table like a deck of cards. "You lied," I said simply. "You betrayed me, and I want to know why." Her face crumpled a little as she looked at the evidence. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "It didn't mean anything. I was lonely, and it just happened. I swear it's over now." She looked genuinely upset, at least that's what she wanted me to believe, but I felt no pity, only a cold resolve. That's not how it works, I said, voice steady. Didn't just cheat once. You went behind my back for months and you lied about your whereabouts, your feelings, everything. I want to know what made you do it. She hesitated for a long moment. I don't know, she finally said, voice trembling. I guess I just felt neglected. You were always working, always busy. I thought maybe I'd find some attention elsewhere. I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt a wave of nausea. Neglected, that's your excuse. I leaned forward, staring her down. You had an affair with your boss during my sister's funeral. During your own family's tragedy, you were with him. Do you even hear yourself? She started crying then, tears streaming down her face. I felt nothing but a cold fury. That wasn't remorse, that was remorse for getting caught. I knew I couldn't stay. I'd reached my limit, but I also knew I wouldn't just walk away, not without making her regret this forever. In that moment, I decided to play my hand. I told her I'd been planning something, I'd been gathering evidence, and I knew everything. I said I wasn't going to stay and be a fool, that I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. I wasn't going to leave her with her lies and her tears. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, her face twisted with confusion and fear. What are you talking about? She asked desperately. Just watch, I said, voice cold. You'll see soon enough. I had already started setting my plan into motion. I had contacted a trusted friend who knew a few things about her boss, about the kind of person he was. I had some dirt, some leverage, enough to make her regret crossing me. I knew I couldn't confront her directly again without risking her trying to cover her tracks, so I decided to make her see her own reflection in this chaos. I'd tell her I was going to expose her, her affair, her lies, everything. I'd make her face her actions, and she'd have to live with the consequences. That night I didn't sleep much. My mind kept racing, thinking of how I'd put the pieces together, how I'd make her realize she'd lost everything. I'd warned her, but she hadn't listened. Now it was time for her to understand exactly what that meant. I was going to make her feel powerless, just like I'd felt when I uncovered her betrayal. I also knew I had to keep my cool. No impulsive moves, no rash confrontations. I had to be patient, waiting for the right moment. I set my plan to escalate slowly, leaking just enough to shake her foundation, to make her doubt herself, to make her regret every lie. And as I stood in the quiet of the night, I felt that familiar, unsettling calm. It was a dangerous kind of calm, one that promised I was about to turn the tables. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She thought she could lie her way out of this mess. But I was going to make sure she paid, and I'd do it on my terms. I already knew what I'd do next. It was time she saw that the betrayal went both ways. I was done being the fool in this game. Now I was the one setting the rules. And the first step was about to be revealed. She wasn't going to see it coming. The next few days felt like walking on a razor's edge. I kept my head down, worked my regular hours, but my mind was racing nonstop. Every time I saw her, I caught a flicker of guilt, a flash of fear, and I knew I had to move carefully. I'd already decided I wasn't going to let her get away with this casually. No, I was going to make her feel what I'd felt when I found out, betrayed, humiliated, powerless. In the meantime, I started laying my trap. I reached out to a guy I knew who had connections, someone who owed me a favor. I told him I needed some dirt on Tom, her boss, and I played it cool, making sure he understood this was serious. I didn't want her to suspect I was up to anything. My goal was to gather enough leverage so that when I finally confronted her, I could do it with the upper hand. While I waited for that, I focused on the details. I checked her phone again, looking for anything I might have missed. I snooped through her email, her social media, even her work account. I wanted to see if she'd slipped up in other ways or if there were more clues about what she'd been hiding. It was uncomfortable, that feeling of invading someone's privacy, but I told myself it was justified. She crossed the line first, so I was just leveling the playing field. One night I caught her in a rare moment of vulnerability. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands, her face pale and drawn. I watched her silently from the doorway, feeling the weight of everything we'd lost. I finally broke the silence. You know this isn't just about some mistake, right? She looked up, her eyes glassy. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. It just happened so fast. I was lonely and I didn't think it would come to this. I took a step closer, feeling my jaw tight. You thought you could keep lying, keep hiding, and I'd never find out. You lied during your sister's funeral, for God's sake. Do you even realize how much you've damaged us?" She lowered her eyes. I was stupid. I was weak. That's when I knew I'd pushed her to her limit. I had to be careful now. I told her that I was going to give her one chance, one last chance to tell me the truth. To come clean about everything, or I would make sure she paid. I didn't specify how yet, but I knew I'd find a way. Looking back, I realized she thought she was untouchable, that her lies would never catch up with her. But I was already several steps ahead. I'd been planning how to expose her, to make her see that she'd lost everything she cared about. It was a game, yes, but I was playing for keeps. The next day, I met with my contact. He handed me some information, details about Tom's background, some questionable deals he'd been involved in, things that could ruin him if I wanted to go that route. But I didn't need to humiliate him publicly. I just needed enough to shake her confidence. I wanted her to see that her whole world was about to come crashing down if she didn't come clean now. That evening, I returned home and waited for her to get back from work. When she finally walked through the door, I was already prepared. I sat her down again, eyes steady, voice calm but firm. "I found out more," I said, "about Tom. About what he's done. I could ruin him, make him lose his job, his reputation, or you could just tell me everything straight up." She looked nervous, her hands trembling. "You're bluffing," she whispered. "No, I'm not," I replied, "and I don't want to destroy anyone, I just want the truth. Tell me what's really going on, or I promise I will." She hesitated, her lips trembling. Then finally she broke. "It's not just work," she admitted, voice barely audible. "He's been pressuring me, making me feel special, telling me I deserve better than you. I thought I was in control, but I was." I felt a cold wave of satisfaction. She was finally laying it all out. I knew I had the upper hand now. I told her I'd give her until the end of the week to decide. Either she came clean and ended it, or I'd take the matter into my own hands. Her eyes pleaded, but I was done being fooled. I stood up, feeling a strange mix of relief and rage. "Remember," I said flatly, "this is your last chance. Don't make me regret it." As I walked out, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The pieces were falling into place. I was ready to execute the next phase of my plan. She thought she could cheat and lie her way out of it. She had no idea what was coming. But I did. And I was prepared to see this through, no matter what the cost. Now I just had to wait. And once the moment was right, she'd see that betrayal wasn't something you could hide from forever. The week dragged on like a slow, painful grind. Every day I monitored her, watching her reactions, waiting for her to slip up again or make a move. I kept the details close to my chest, knowing full well that the moment I revealed everything, her world would shatter. I wanted her to feel cornered, helpless, aware that her lies had been uncovered and that the game was over. In those days, I felt a weird calm settle over me. Not peace exactly, but a sense of control I hadn't felt since I first discovered her betrayal. It was as if I'd finally taken back some of the power she'd wielded in secret. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-respect. And I was prepared to do whatever it took. During these days, I also reached out to her boss's wife. I knew it was risky, but I needed to show her that her husband's reputation was vulnerable, that his betrayal extended beyond just my wife. I fed her enough information to make her suspicious, to make her question everything. I wanted her to see that her marriage was on the brink of collapse, that her trust in her husband was slipping away. Meanwhile, my wife was fraying at the edges. She'd become more anxious, more defensive, and I could tell she was starting to realize she'd overplayed her hand. She'd send me guilty little texts, trying to apologize without saying too much. I kept my responses cold, detached, letting her stew in her own guilt. One night she finally broke down completely. She sat on the couch, trembling, her eyes red from crying. She looked at me, desperation etched across her face. "Please," she begged, voice cracking. "Just forget it, it's over. I'll do anything. Just don't ruin my life." I looked at her, feeling a strange mixture of pity and disgust. "It's too late for that," I said quietly. "You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." That's when I revealed the full extent of my plan. I told her I'd been talking to people who knew about Tom, people who could destroy him if they wanted. I told her I had enough to make sure he'd never show his face at work again if I let it all out. Her face went pale and she begged me not to. I leaned in closer, letting her see the cold fire in my eyes. You thought you could cheat, lie, and get away with it. Think again. You're going to face the consequences, and I'm the one who's going to make sure you do. I knew then that I'd planted the seed of her downfall. My plan was in motion, and all I had to do now was wait for the perfect moment. I spent the next day organizing everything, proofs, contacts, a plan to expose her and her boss without causing unnecessary scandal. I wanted her to see her life unravel piece by piece, and I was determined to be the one pulling the strings. Late that night, I sat in my car outside her office building, watching her walk in, oblivious to what I'd already set in motion. This was it, the moment where she'd realize that the betrayal she thought she hid so well was about to catch up with her. I'd made sure she'd never look at her marriage or herself the same way again. As I started the engine and pulled away, I felt a strange, chilling satisfaction. She had taken everything from me, but now I was about to take everything from her. Her pride, her stability, her sense of security. And I wasn't looking back. The next day I was ready. I had the evidence in hand, the plan perfectly timed. All I needed was her reaction, and I knew it was going to be catastrophic for her. I'd watched her crumble in small ways. Now it was time to finish what I'd started. I was going to confront her with everything in a way she could never deny. And when I did, I would make sure she understood that betrayal isn't something you get away with. Not in my world. Not anymore. I waited until the evening when she was home alone before I made my move. Everything was set. The evidence, the plan, the moment I'd been building towards. I sat her down in the living room, the air thick with tension. Her eyes flicked nervously around, sensing something was coming. I placed the USB drive and the printed proof on the table between us. Here's everything, I said quietly, voice steely. All the texts, the receipts, the emails. I want you to see for yourself what you've been hiding. Her face went pale. I watched her eyes dart to the papers, her hands trembling. She opened her mouth, probably to deny. But I cut her off. You lied to my face during one of the hardest moments of my life. During my sister's funeral, you decided to be with him. That's not just betrayal, it's a slap in the face. She broke down then, tears streaming down her cheeks, voice trembling. I'm sorry, she choked out. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was weak. I didn't want to lose everything. I felt the familiar surge of cold anger, but I kept my voice steady. You lost everything the day you decided to cheat. You lost my trust, my respect, and I'm done pretending. I've already contacted people I know, people who can ruin him, ruin your reputation if I choose to, but I won't do that, not yet. I want you to understand what you've thrown away. Her eyes widened in fear. What are you going to do? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I leaned in closer, voice low and deadly. I'm going to give you one last chance. One chance to come clean, to tell the truth. Because if you don't, I will expose everything. Your lies, your affair, your secret hotel nights, and I'll do it in a way that leaves you with nothing. She looked at me, helpless, defeated, knowing she'd pushed me past the point of no return. I could see the realization sinking in that her actions had sealed her fate. She started to beg, but I wasn't feeling merciful anymore. I handed her the USB stick and said, that's all the proof. It's your choice, own up or see your life fall apart. Later that night, I watched her pack her bags. She was quiet now, broken, no fight left in her. I felt nothing but resolve. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making sure she understood she had chosen her own downfall. As she left the house, I handed her the keys, my final gesture. Her hands shook as she took them, her eyes full of regret. Goodbye, I said quietly. I hope you remember this lesson for the rest of your life. Walking out that door, she finally understood she'd lost everything. Her marriage, her dignity, her sense of control. And I, for all the pain, finally felt free. The betrayal had cut deep, but it also opened my eyes to what I'd been blind to for too long. In the end, I realized that honesty and integrity matter more than any lie or betrayal. Still, I learned a hard lesson. Trust once broken is nearly impossible to rebuild, and sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your own peace. I walked away knowing I'd done what I had to do, and that, In some strange way, I had taken back my power. Because no matter how much someone hurts you, you always have the choice to stand up, take control, and walk away.